Thank you all for being here today. I hope everyone's having a great day, connecting with new people and learning a bunch. So today, I'm excited to share with you how we think about building products that customers love. We'll start off with a quick overview of some of the frameworks we use at Intuit, which is customer-driven innovation. Customer-driven innovation, or CDI, tells us how to choose the customer problems we want to go solve for, and Design for Delight, or D for D, is how we solve those problems. We will then dive into some of the tools and techniques that we use to design for delight. My goal over the next 15 to 20 minutes is to give you an overview of these frameworks, and more importantly, to arm you with some tools and techniques that you can take back to your workplace to actually build products that delight customers. Does that sound like a good plan? All right, I'm glad because I didn't have a backup plan for the next 20 otherwise. All right, so first, let's start with why does delight matter? Our number one driver for new customer product purchases at Intuit is word of mouth, and customers typically will not recommend products that they don't love. So designing for delight, and delight is critical because it's no longer enough to just build products that meet customer expectations. We believe true innovation is about exceeding those expectations, so much so that customers feel compelled to share their experiences and recommend our products to others. So let's take a look at how we do this. Many years ago, our founder, Scott Cook, analyzed the characteristics of new product launches at Intuit. And what he found was that there were significant differences between products that did well and the ones that failed. For the successes, 3 criteria were true. 1, we had an important unsolved customer problem that we or our partners that we enabled could solve really well, and that we believed that we could build a durable competitive advantage. Success lies at the intersection of these 3. For the products that did not do well, 1 or more of these criteria were not true. So this was then packaged into what we call as customer-driven innovation, and this is pretty much the framework that we use to figure out the next growth opportunities. Design for Delight is how we solve those problems. And Design for Delight has 3 key components. Deep customer empathy. So customer-driven innovation has just told us a generic problem area to go after. What deep customer empathy allows us to do is understand why. Why is this a problem for our customers? And once you understand that, you get to define a clear problem statement. To build on what Lauren just said, even if you come up with the most elegant solutions, if you're solving for the wrong problem, it doesn't matter. There's no delight factor there. So once you've identified the customer problem that you want to go after, it's time to come up with ideas to solve it. And that's where going broad to go narrow comes in. It stems from the thinking that to land on one great idea, you have to generate a lot of ideas and be intentional about narrowing it down to the few that you want to go test. And testing is where rapid experimentation with customers comes in. It's simply, the idea is we want to go put something in front of customers and watch them react to it using the product, as opposed to listening to them talk about a hypothetical solution. So let's actually dive into each of these, starting with deep customer empathy. We define deep customer empathy to be knowing our customers better than they know themselves. But how do you know you've reached this state of deep empathy? Let's actually take a look at an example. Most of us have sat in meetings where we have presented or have been presented data along these lines. What this is telling us is that over 60% of small business owners feel like there is a chance that they will get audited for their sales tax filings. And what 48% of them are telling us is that if they are audited, there's a good chance there's an error in their filing. Now, that is a problem because if you're audited and there's an error, you're going to get penalized for it, most likely. So what this is telling us is that there is a problem. But what we don't know here is, why is this a problem? Why are small business owners okay taking that big of a risk? Data usually tells you the what. Empathy is what tells you the why. So in order to understand and come up with a clear problem statement, we need to holistically understand the customer's world. What are their needs, their motivations, their behaviors, and so on. We need to bring in the data and marry it with this empathy factor, which allows us to understand why is this a problem and why is this the behavior they're choosing to do. Now, data can come to us in many forms. Most of you are probably familiar with quite a few of these techniques. Quantitative research, you could look at competitive analysis to see what are the solutions customers have at their disposal today. You could look at behavioral analysis to understand how are customers using a certain product versus how it was intended to be used. Or you could talk to subject matter experts and the likes. All of this will give us patterns and trends that we must then validate in real time with real behavior. That real-time behavior validation is where qualitative research comes in, and that is what helps us to go dig deep and understand why. So let's take a look at how we approach qualitative research. We think of it in two parts. One, we have to observe customers to actually understand what they're doing and why they're doing things. And then from all these observations, we want to then unpack the findings to parse for insights, things that will ultimately help us define a clear customer problem statement. So with observing customers, there are many techniques. You've probably heard of focus group studies or usability studies. I'm going to talk to you about a technique that we lean in on heavily called Follow Me Home. Follow Me Home is literally us following customers to their work environment. Now again, it's not as creepy as it sounds. We do this with full consent from the customer. But the idea here is we want to actually go to their work environment so we can bridge the say-do gap. What is the customer saying they're doing versus what are they actually doing? If a customer might come up to you and say, well, I use this particular product to accomplish task X. But what they might not even realize is that while they predominantly use that product, they're using a Post-it note or a calculator or a calendar app and many other workarounds. What these workarounds might be hiding are problems we could solve really well if only we knew about it. And that's what we're trying to do with Follow Me Homes. So how do we do this? We actually schedule a 1-hour interview with customers and go in groups of 2s or 3s. And our key goal here is to observe, ditching our expertise and pretending like we're newbies. We're asking questions, lots of it, to understand what is the customer trying to do, what are the problems they're encountering when they try to do this particular task, why is it a problem, when does the problem happen, how do they work around this. All of this is in service to understand what's truly going on behind their thinking. You ask whys and lead with, start with when a customer says, I do this particular thing this way, you ask why, and then follow with 4 other whys to get to the root cause, like what is their thinking and what's driving that decision. You're gathering all these stories to make sense of them later. The making sense of it is where you're unpacking your findings. This is where you're actually mining through all that data to figure out what are actionable steps I can take to correct some of these. There are many techniques here that we'll talk about some of these, and I'm going to actually do that using an example. So you saw some data on sales tax a little while ago. Business owners, when they sell products, they're usually expected to collect taxes from customers. They are then expected to turn around and pay those taxes to the government. So if I'm a small business owner selling bagels out of New York, I need to know how much tax I need to collect from you if I sell you a whole bagel. And I also need to know that the tax rate changes if I sell you a sliced bagel. Now, if I put cream cheese on it, that has changed the tax rate yet again. So these rates are complex. And the issue is if I collect the wrong taxes, and more importantly, if I remit the wrong taxes and I get audited, I will get penalized. Now, 48% of our customers have just told us that they think there is an error in their tax rate. So to understand why are small business owners struggling with these tax rates, we decided to do a bunch of Follow Me Homes, customer interviews, and research. And based on all that data that we gathered, we then organized it into what we call as an empathy map. Empathy map allows you to organize what they say versus what they do, which is the explicit signals that you're gathering from your Follow Me Homes and your other research techniques. And then the implicit, which is the what are they thinking versus what are they feeling. So if you think about, if like one of the cohorts we followed for sales tax actually said, I think we're good. Like I just Google up my sales tax rate based on my zip code. What are they actually doing? They do go up to, go Google up their tax rate based on the zip code. It takes them to some agency websites, which has a lot of legal verbiage in there. But somewhere in there, it tells them what the tax rate is associated with the kind of products they're selling for the jurisdiction they belong to. Now, a jurisdiction is different from the zip code, and its tax rates are not based on the zip code. So the customer takes their best guess at what the tax rate applicable to them is, and then put it down on Post-it notes and spreadsheets. How does this really make them feel? Most of them know that they have interpreted some legal verbiage, which makes them feel anxious and pretty overwhelmed. But their big question is, will I get audited? And am I doing this right? So that was one cohort's journey through the empathy map. You do this for all the other observations. And then it's time to mine for insights. In the case of sales tax, the key insight we found was, one, customers spend a lot of time trying to be sales tax compliant. And why is this interesting to us? Because there is no universal source of truth for sales tax rates. And even if they do chance on one of them, there are changes. These rates keep changing, and they have no way of knowing when it's changed. The second thing is customers spend a lot of money trying to be compliant. They either collect the wrong taxes and then pay the rest out of their pocket, or some of them choose not to collect taxes. But at the end of the day, this is spending a lot of time and money. And that, for us, is a key insight because time and money happen to be the two most precious commodities for small business owners. So with that, we had a clear understanding of what the problem was. So we were ready to draft a customer problem statement. What this enables you to do is clarify what the customer's problem is, what the root causes are, and what the associated emotions are. And the way we did that for sales tax is, I am a new small business owner. That's the description of our customer. What am I trying to accomplish? I'm trying to be compliant, sales tax compliant. What's standing in my way? It's daunting to figure out the right rates. And because there are so many constantly changing rules, I feel overwhelmed and anxious. So with the customer problem statement defined, it's now time to actually come up with ideas to solve this. We often anchor on the first or second idea that comes to us, and we jump to build solutions without considering alternatives. But research actually shows that the best ideas we have are the ones that come later in the journey, the ones that come to us after we've weighed the different alternatives and actually remixed and rebuilt on the ideas that came along. That's what we're trying to do with going broad to go narrow. We're going to look at one technique each, starting with 7-to-1 to go broad. The idea here is simple. In a worksheet like this, you first jot down the best idea you have to solve this problem. And we usually encourage people to actually sketch out the idea and write a few words to describe each idea. Then you come up with 6 other ideas. The key here is not to build on each idea, but to actually come up with completely divergent ideas. You do this individually, like about 10 minutes or 10 to 15 minutes, and then you actually do this in a share out with a group. And the thinking there is that share out should help you actually brainstorm and build on each other's ideas to come up with one final set of ideas that you want to carry forth. Now, this is by far one of my all-time favorite activities in product building. We often talk about it, and you saw this earlier in Lauren's slides as well. Product management is the art and is part art and part science. This is where the art comes to being. To me, this is where creativity can be unleashed. There are no constraints here. You don't have to think about your resources, your cost, your tech stack, the schedule. Throw all of that out the window and just go bold. This is where you can bring in the research that you've done in the analogous space. It's similar problem solved in other industries. Use that as inspiration to come up with ideas. 2 tips on this one. Diversity. This is a key place to bring in diverse opinions, bring in people from different disciplines, or any other way that you can bring diverse thoughts into this product building process. 2, oftentimes we will invite people from outside that immediate project area, just to infuse new, fresh thinking, as well as, we'd like to have somebody who challenges our assumptions along the way. Once you have a multitude of ideas, you're ready to go narrow. The goal with going narrow is to identify the few ideas that you actually want to test with customers. We use a 2x2 as one of the techniques to go narrow. This is a great way to weigh your ideas against criteria you believe will help you decide which are the few that you want to carry forth. So in this case, we've actually said problems we can solve well against the impact it has on customers. Another 2x2 that we commonly use is the impact on customers versus what is the effort to build this particular solution. You could come up with a multitude of 2x2s. The key here is at the end of the day, you want to converge them down to the one 2x2 that will help you decide which you want to carry forth as tests. Testing is where rapid experimentation comes in. And the way we do this is lean experimentation loop, starting with leap of faith assumptions. Our leap of faith assumptions are the riskiest assumptions that have to be true for success. So once you've identified your assumptions and jotted them down, you're trying to decide the kind of experiments that will help you gauge the true customer intent. Once you've run the experiments, you're obviously gathering data to figure out whether you want to persevere down the same path or pivot away into something else. So how did this play out in the case of sales tax? We decided to run an experiment type called concierge test, which is where we had sales tax agents call up customers to help them with their sales tax rates. Our leap of faith assumption in this case was that customers will feel confident enough to trust the sales tax agents. What did we learn? They actually ended up using the sales tax rates as recommended to them by the agents because they were able to have a dialogue with them and figure out how these rates came about. What did we do? We decided to continue down this path, so persevere down this path with one change. We obviously wanted to make this scalable, and so we decided to automate that instead of having agents contact customers. Couple of things to note here about experimentation. The key is you are trying to gauge the true customer intent. So you want to collect some currency from the customer in exchange for the service or solution you're providing. And currency could be anything of value to the customer that they're willing to give you in exchange for this product you've provided them. It could be time, it could be money, it could be any personal data or anything that they consider to be of value, but it needs to instill confidence in you that this is the right customer behavior. And secondly, experimentation type. There's a full spectrum of experiments you could choose to do. You could run a quick sketch prototype and put it in front of customers to watch their reactions, or you could go and run a full-blown A/B test, or do something like we did and something in between, which is a concierge test. The key to figuring out which experiment type to go after is what will help you go through this loop as quickly as possible and get that customer data as soon as you can. With that, in summary, we've actually gone through the innovation frameworks that we use at Intuit, customer-driven innovation and design for delight, and dug deep into some of the components here and the techniques that we use in each of them. Later today, I will be posting a Medium blog, which will include a link to this deck, as well as some worksheets that you can use. Thank you so very much.